following podcast that you guys are about to hear is a collaboration between myself, Dominic Rizzi, aka the movie nerd of the Talkin' TV podcast, as well as my good friend and co-host, or in this case, host for this episode, Nathaniel Ahart of the Nathaniel Ahart YouTube channel. This is a collaboration between the two of us and is simultaneously broadcast on both mine and his channels, and he is the official host for this episode. So, without further ado, this is the Hayao Miyazaki Hall of Fame.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Now, obviously, you're probably looking at the screen and it's like, what the hell is going on here? This is not how I see your videos, and this is not how you usually start off Talking TV. Well, I'll tell you folks, this is not a regular Talking TV episode. And although, of course, you probably know the movie nerd himself, Dom Rizzi.
What's up, guys?
This obviously isn't our first collaboration, but this really is kind of an interesting test for both of us, and probably the first true cross collaboration I have done besides with Johnny Radio. This really is the culmination of our two channels coming together, Nathaniel Ahart and Talkin' TV. And I'm really excited to talk about today the ranking of Hayao Miyazaki's filmography, the legendary animated filmmaker coming out of Japan, the forefather of Studio Ghibli. You know him and you probably love him. And yeah, we're going to dive into all his films today. And I'm really excited that you could be here with me for this very, very special episode. And yeah, it's going to be a great time, man.
Listen, man, I've been getting into Miyazaki's work at Studio Ghibli over the last couple of years, probably since COVID. And I mean, I can easily say it's the only animation studio to me that rivals Pixar. And so naturally, you know, we've done collaborations on the Talking TV channel before. Me and Chris did a lot of collaborations back in the day during COVID. But as far as this being like the first official, like big collaboration we've probably done in a long time, you know, this is simultaneously streaming on the Talking TV channel and the Nathaniel Ahart YouTube channel right now. This is a big one, to say the least. I'm excited for this one.
Absolutely, man. And well, I mean, let's get right into it, guys. Don't forget, you're watching Talkin' TV.
Boom.
All right, so we're back, of course, obviously, with this very special episode. And I mean, let's just talk about Hayao Miyazaki and the genius that he is. I mean, this man at 82 years old is still making an incredible quality work. And I think you're with me when I say this, easily the most consistent director of all time. He may not have the peaks of some other filmmakers, in my opinion, but I would say that there's not a single film of his that I would give less than an 8 out of 10 to. I mean, this guy has literally not missed in all the years he's been making movies. And of course, obviously with The Boy and the Heron premiering at TIFF, which I will thankfully get to see this weekend, I am beyond excited for that. We obviously want to give the respect and care to Miyazaki and show how much we appreciate his work by talking about these films in really a definitive ranking. Well, at least for me, because I have seen all his films. This guy's missing one here, so it's almost
true.
a definitive ranking.
Almost.
But not
I'm this
quite.
close. I'm this close. I'm almost there. Yeah. I want to piggyback off what you were saying about Miyazaki real quick. Just the fact that it's like, it's so weird because most typical, you don't see an American director with this level of a consistent filmography that's entirely animated. I think maybe the closest is Brad Bird, but Brad Bird, I think, has just as many live action movies now as he does animated films, you know, so there's nobody quite on the American side that has a track record like Miyazaki. You know, obviously, you know, the biggest, I guess, competition, if you even want to go there, is probably between him and Pixar. You know, like they've got like a friendly banter, a friendly rival, you know, back and forth. You know, like the town in Luca is deliberately named after Porco Rosso. You have a Totoro doll that pops up in Toy Story 3. You know, you have the infamous, you know, when Harvey Weinstein wanted to cut pieces of Mononoke off for the American redub, and Miyazaki famously sent him a katana that was wrapped with a note that said no cuts. You know, the guy's a genius and he's a legend, you know, and like you were saying before, the fact that his work is so consistent over across the course of 40 years. You know, obviously he has this long history of working in television, in Japanese television and anime before he co-founds Studio Ghibli with Isao Takahata, and I forgot the third guy that they formed it with. And you're right, like over the course of 40 years, starting it's weird because Nausicaa is technically pre-Ghibli, but it's now counted
Right.
it's now counted as a Ghibli film, all the way through to The Wind Rises, which was previously his final film on the 10-year anniversary, and he came back to do one more, The Boy and the Heron. Obviously, Ghibli itself has a lot of interesting movies outside of Miyazaki, but I think it's safe to say that like when it comes to it, like the definitive canon, the most consistent canon, if you will, across all the filmmakers that have gone into Ghibli, it's Miyazaki, like
Oh,
without question.
easily. And just in general to the point about Pixar, like I think Pixar has more peaks that maybe Miyazaki's films don't, in my opinion. But the thing is, like, yeah, John Lasseter made a few films, but there isn't like one singular director, and there's not a singular vision. Where I think Miyazaki is the one of the only people in animation that you can truly call an auteur, and one of the best auteurs, and not just obviously the best auteur in animation, but just in cinema in general. I mean, he has to be in the conversation for at least top 15 filmmakers of all time, even higher. You know, you could easily make the argument for him being up there. So, yeah, I mean, I've loved Miyazaki's films for years, ever since I was a late teen. You know, coming out of high school, and yeah, I mean, I've just grown and to love and appreciate his work ever since, and I'm really glad to say I've seen all of his films, and yeah, so we might as well just get into it here.
Real quick before we get
Yeah,
started, though, I wanted to ask you one thing though. So, would
what's
you
up?
say just as like from a filmmaking perspective and all that, would you say that now I know that Raisuke Hamaguchi is making a decent come up, you know, obviously
Right,
with
right.
Drive My Car getting the amount of attention and from what I heard, well respected respect and admiration that it deserved a couple years ago. But would you say that after Kurosawa, Miyazaki is probably the most influential director to come out of Japan?
I would put Ozu above him, and then I would say
Okay.
Miyazaki.
Really?
Yeah.
So you would say Ozu over
Oh,
Miyazaki?
100%. I
Okay.
mean, especially if you not to go off on a whole thing about Ozu, but I mean, just his really restrained style and his very kind of like down to earth, very slow but very poignant and very enveloping style that he established. You see that in so many movies. Like it is so evident. Like just look at the works of Kagonada, right? Like all his
Right.
films are very much influenced by Ozu, the restraint that he shows. Yeah, so I would easily put Ozu above Miyazaki, but I think it's safe to say they're the top three.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was thinking as well. And like I said, and Hamaguchi is coming up there, but he's Drive My Car. That wasn't his first movie, was it?
I I don't think so, but it was definitely his best,
Yeah.
at least to my knowledge,
Yeah,
and
and now
I love that movie.
he's got two coming out this year. But
Yeah,
of course, the
2?
Japan he's got a second one.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but he does have a second one as well. Maybe one that he's only producing. I would have to check that. But of course,
mhm.
Japan selected another movie for the official entry for their
Was
official
it
entry for
Monster?
international feature. It wasn't Monster. It was something else. I'll have to get back to you on that.
That's unfortunate. I might miss that one at TIFF. But anyways, yeah. Miyazaki, obviously, we're going to be talking about him for a good while here,
Yeah.
so we might as well get into this. I'm not really sure. Should I just start off with the bottom two
Well,
since
yeah.
I've seen one more
So
movie?
I was gonna ask. Well, I was gonna ask you about that. Is do you
Yeah.
want to break it down movie by movie chronologically and then rank them, or do you want to go through like based on how you have them ranked?
Oh, I just want to go through my ranking and then we'll just
All
move
right,
up.
all
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
By all means, then go for it.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to start off with number 11. I have Ponyo from 2008. Now, I mean, it's safe to say that I think this is easily his lightest film. There's no way around it. You know, especially when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is like very cute." You know, and I mean, let's be honest though. Ponyo is like one of the cutest characters in like any movie. Absolutely adorable. But even with that being said, even if it doesn't go as deep as some of his other films or has a lot to say or on his mind. I mean, there's obviously something on his mind, you know, always talking about nature in the way in which humans bastardize it or otherwise. But I really feel like there's still so many moments of awe in this film, and I just think it's just such an enjoyable watch, and it's maybe even it's one of his wholesome most wholesome movies, which I think is kind of amazing at the same time. So there's definitely still so much to admire here that I like watch this movie and can't help but still really, really, really enjoy it. I just think, as I said, like I don't think there's as much uh impact there as some of his other films. But then again, it's still nothing to slouch at. I mean, this is a really, really solid animated movie, and I think some filmmakers would be happy if this was like maybe like top two films, like a regular director who doesn't really have a name to them. Maybe they had one hit or something. Yeah, I mean, this is still is a really good film, and yeah, it's my least favorite. But what does that tell you?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So you want to do your bottom two, and then I'll do my bottom two, and then we'll
Yes,
go back and
yes.
forth. Yeah.
So my number 10, just cracking in the top 10 Miyazaki films, is one that you have not seen.
Yes.
And that obviously is his directorial debut, Lupin the Third, The Castle of Cagliostro. Look, I watched the first Lupin film even before this, and that film is so dated. I also watched the English dub because it was the only one available, and it was just not good. The animation had some cool moments, but it was really janky, very distracting. Didn't age too well, and I just think the movie made no sense. And that I think part of that was the dub, but I also think the plot was just absolute nonsense. But then you bring Miyazaki in to direct his first feature, and it was almost like he was a fully formed filmmaker at this time before Studio Ghibli, all this stuff. He comes in and makes this really, really cool adventure heist film that, you just look at the way he draws landscapes, the way the grass flows, and just so many things, the way he draws his characters, they became so indicative of his style. And the fact that he had that just straight from the get-go was really, really impressive. And I think what he does with the character of Lupin, because I know a lot of people were mad that he wasn't like this megalomaniac, psychopath, or that he was in the first movies or in the manga. But here he really kind of is an anti-hero who's kind of grown a bit tired of his old antics. And I think that was the other thing in the first movie. I just found him to be so insufferable. But here Miyazaki really brings a humanity to this character that makes him very likable and watchable. And I have to say, there's just some stunning moments of animation, as you'd expect. Some amazing action sequences. It's just such a fun movie from top to bottom. And there's actually the clock tower scene near the end was actually the inspiration for those who have seen Disney's The Great Mouse Detective. That was a direct nod to the Castle of Cagliostro. And I think yet again, it's just really like solid start to anybody's filmography. A debut filmmaker would be happy to have this be their first film, because I think it would get them a lot of attention, as it did Miyazaki going into the 80s when he founded Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, absolutely. So now here's my question. So obviously, as somebody who has not seen Castle of Cagliostro, again, just like it's been a busy month to say the least. And the fact that honestly I was able to wrap the majority of the Studio Ghibli canon, with the exception of Cagliostro, is a miracle in general. But so if you were putting out like say like a director's like the best directorial debuts from directors, is Cagliostro in there?
No, but it is
Really?
really
Okay.
good.
All
It's
right.
not Get Out or something, you know what I
Right. Well,
mean? But
yeah, but okay.
yeah, it's not Citizen Kane,
Right.
but it's
That's what I
still
wanted to get at.
like you could still tell that this is a director with a
Right.
vision and a
And isn't this
style. And
wasn't this a direct-to-TV movie as well? Did this go to theaters?
I think it did. I think it was in theaters in Japan.
Okay.
Anyone watching, correct us if we're wrong, but it was well, no, it was a theatrical
Okay.
film,
Got it.
because
Okay.
he did a lot of miniseries on TV beforehand, but this was really like his first
Right.
gateway into the movie theaters, if you will. So yeah, it didn't come to the US for a while, but I know directors like Steven Spielberg hold this in high regard.
Yeah.
So
A
and
lot of
some,
people have talked about this movie as well. Spielberg, I
yeah,
believe Paul Thomas Anderson, David Fincher, I believe, has cited influences from this movie. The Wachowskis
yeah.
as well for the Matrix and stuff like that. Yeah, so I was doing quite a bit of reading on it because I was really really mad I missed it. I wanted to watch it, but yeah, yeah, I know, right? So if we're doing my bottom, so I it's weird because the way that I have it ranked on my letterbox, I have it as not technically Miyazaki. I have it as Studio Ghibli, but I have all the rest of Miyazaki's movies on there. I have one movie on here that is Ghibli, but not Miyazaki. But I'll wait until a little bit later to talk about it because it's near the top of my list. Going over my 11 and 10, we have Howl's Moving Castle at 11 and Porco Rosso at 10. but like you were saying before, pretty much to echo everything that you were saying with Miyazaki really having never made anything below an 8 out of 10. These to me are his 2 8 out of 10s. Howl's Moving Castle in particular would probably piss off a lot of people because I know that that's a lot of people's favorites. And for
Right.
whatever reason, like just after watching back to back, I think I'd watched like Porco Rosso was kind of fun, but after having just watched back to back Nausicaa and Castle in the Sky, which were both just so grand, so operatic, so epic, Howl's Moving Castle as more of like it's like a mix almost between like it has elements of Spirited Away along with like body shifting elements. The whole thing is it's like the main character is cursed by this one witch and then has to go and seek out this sorcerer named Hal who she's fallen in love with. So it's like a mix between like a teen coming of age story and also it's stated as an anti-Iraq anti-war piece. And I have to say that in terms of like Miyazaki meshing his themes in his movie, I think that this is the one that I'm not saying it didn't work as well, but for me personally, I feel like there's just a lot of elements that kind of fell through the cracks. It's still really, really engaging as well. Again, just the animation alone makes it an 8 out of 10,
Right.
a 4 out of 5, if you will, because again, you could just get lost for hours in the scenery and just like looking at the mechanics of the movie Castle and the fact that it is for the most part all hand drawn. There's no CG involved in there. I just found the character of Howl himself to be kind of alienating. I thought all the stuff with the Witch of the Ways kind of went away. I wish they could have dove in more into like his past connection outside of the one flashback that we get at the end. Also, I thought the transition into breaking down what's it called, how the girl's curse is lifted at the end, I thought it could have been done a little bit more succinctly. I'm nitpicking, I know, but just in terms of like, I know I've told you this before, I always measure how I really enjoy a movie based on like how much I emotionally connect to it, and these two are the ones that I probably emotionally connected to the least, even less so than Ponyo, which is probably kind of crazy. And my number 10 is Porco Rosso. This one was probably the most fun movie of his. It's definitely the most swashbuckling, if you will. It's a fun adventure. It's kind of like the grizzled. It's the grizzled wants to loner stereotype that you've seen a bunch of times before. And it's funny because this is one of the few Miyazaki ones that I actually watched with the American dub. And surprisingly enough, Michael Keaton's just gravelly tone for the character. It works really well, like really, really well. Like it's kind of funny because I watch like as far as like how I alternate between like which ones I watch first with the Japanese dub and which ones that I watch with the American with the original Japanese audio versus which ones I watched with the American dub. And I remember because the first Ghibli movie that I watched was Spirited Away, and I started watching a version with the American dub, and it just was not good, and I immediately shut it off. And I found a version with the Japanese subtitles, with English subtitles, and it was so much better. But Porco Rosso was a lot of fun, but again, it was another thing where it's like it was almost like got a little too silly for me at points. You brought up a lot of interesting points about that movie that I thought definitely helped recontextualize it a little bit, because you're right. I think the biggest problem with me with that movie is it hinged a little bit too much on metaphor without making that front and center. And I felt like it kind of, for me, took away from a lot of the more interesting elements for sure, but it's still a really good time. It's a really fun time. Certain elements of the romance subplots kind of were a little bit problematic, especially since one of the characters is supposed to be 17. I was like, so that was a little weird, but yeah, for the most part, like I said, those are probably, put it this way, out of a canon that is comprised of almost entirely 4.5 and 5 stars, the fact that those two are the only those two and then my number 9 entry are my only 4 stars that I gave out should tell you about how good he is.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. And I will say to that point about the subs and the dubs, please watch the sub for Castle of
Oh
Cagliostro.
yeah, I figured that
uh,
one. You don't
yeah,
want to dub that one.
I mean, pre-Studio Ghibli, you're going to get mixed results, so don't even try it. But yeah, man, I definitely, well, you'll see how I feel about these movies as we go along, because obviously we haven't seen them yet on my list. But yeah, I can certainly see where you're coming from with that, man. Well, I guess in that case, I'll move on to my number 9, which is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. This was one I recently just watched. I got to see it in theaters, and
Ooh,
yeah, man, it was so
nice.
beautiful. Yeah, and I started watching it before, but I wasn't in the best mood. So I went to theaters and I watched it. And yet again, I think back to Castle Cagliostro for a sec. In that movie, you could kind of see him talking like about like there it's very subtle, but he's kind of talking about like, the elite who, kind of use their, influence to really get away with anything. And so he was dealing with political ideals right from the very beginning. But I think this is the first one very very overt, him talking about nature in this way, and how humans, kind of like use a war for their gain, and don't really think twice about what's going on around them or their environment. And I think you get that tenfold in this movie, and I think it really is such a beautiful movie. I think my thing with it, and one reason why it's low, it took me a while to get into it, especially at the beginning, when Nausicaa's like saying, "Oh, I wonder what this is. I can take this back to the village. We can't breathe in here." And it's just really spoon feeding you exposition. And that really kind of like annoyed me. And it took me a while to get into the movie. But once the whole climax of this film comes together, it is such a compelling and riveting watch that really drives the message home, very, very much so, more than even some of his films that I have higher on this list. I think, and this was also pre-Studio Ghibli, but as opposed to Castle of Cagliostro was, is now included in their canon, kind of how Magical Mystery Tour was a Capitol record, but it superseded into the Beatles canon. A very similar situation in that sense in the film side of things. But it's hard. It's not hard to see why anyone would love this film. Not my favorite, but then again, I was on bordering on loving this movie. It's a damn good animated feature, and really cemented him as a filmmaker at the top of his craft in Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to see Nausicaa a little bit down the way on my list. My number 9, technically, or number 8, depending on how you want to do it, is Ponyo. You already talked about it a lot, so I will make mine relatively short. This was one that I was absolutely expecting to hate, just based on obviously the reputation that it's garnered in comparison to other Studio Ghibli. This was the first. This is the third. This is the third movie of his that came out post Spirited Away, and this is the first movie of his to not be nominated for the animated feature Academy Award. Spirited Away obviously won the second ever animated feature award. Howl's Moving Castle was nominated, lost to Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were Rabbit. This was not nominated. The Wind Rises was a few years later. This was not, and I have to say I understand why it was not. I understand also why there are certain people that find this to be the weakest one in his canon. That being said, man, like there's just I was writing about this after I finished Totoro, because I think in a weird way he captures a lot of what made Totoro really, really successful again in Ponyo, which were just the idea of just little kids that, like, so much of the time I feel like would be just considered to be annoying and brash and not fun or charming to watch. And he just is able to capture that in such a raw and genuine way that, like, you feel like you're watching real little kids interacting with each other. He does it beautifully in Totoro, and I think he does it really well in Ponyo. And, like, it's such a fine line to walk, portraying like childhood like connection and romance, especially now, obviously, when everything is kind of being portrayed as like, oh, is this potentially pedophilic and weird and cringy and all that. And you can just tell there's none of that to be found here. It's completely innocent. It's just portraying beautiful childhood innocence, an early romance. It's also a tale of two cities, a Romeo and Juliet tale, if you will. Two different two different people from two different
Right.
factions. Obviously, one from the land and one obviously from the sea and all that. And as far as kind of breaking down the again how that can like help to break down barriers. I classify Miyazaki's movies into a couple of different camps. You have the more lighthearted, slice of life movies, and you have the ones that are like more epic, more big statements on man versus nature and all that, that you found in a lot of his earlier works. And I think that Ponyo is like kind of like, in a weird way, it's one of those movies that like kind of toes the line between both of them, where you've got the magical elements, but you've also got like the slice of life down to earth moments, and also gets like pretty hectic too, like the way that he portrays, again, just going back to the animation. I'm going to be talking about the animation a lot, but the way that he portrays the storm, how it's washing up on the island, and how those two little kids are trying to get to, his mom, which is on a nursing home on the other side of the island. Like it was really hectic, to say the least, and like also again, like was not expecting it to be as short as it was as well, because his movies that are 2 hours long are dense, but like his movies that like are only an hour and a half, they breeze by. So yeah, not better than all the ones that I have ranked above it, but still really, really, really solid movie. Ponyo.
Absolutely, man. And that will bring me to my number 8, which is Kiki's Delivery Service. Now, I know a lot of people might have this one a little bit higher, but then again, like this is one I don't quite love, but it's on the border, man. It really is such a charming movie about Kiki, doing this mandatory year of service and her just trying to, get these jobs and help the community out in the best way she can. And I really think that it is such a great, yet again, another great coming of age tale in Miyazaki's canon. He has a lot of them, but yeah, I mean, it's something he does very, very well. And I think, some of the most breathtaking action when she's flying around the island, and it's just so much fun. And of course, the cat, you got to love the
Oh
cat,
yeah.
one of the best animals in any Miyazaki film. But yet again, like where it goes to some really, deep places emotionally with her character. And of course, by the end, it just absolutely blows me away. Like something is so breathtaking about the ending. Most of his films are so profound in so many ways, and I think Kiki's Delivery Service is just one of them. And yet again, I mean, you see the character designs; they're so iconic. They may not be as iconic as some other characters that we'll get into in these movies down the line, but yeah, I really, really enjoy this one. Yet again, you can make an argument for this being up there for him, and I completely understand.
Yeah, no, or you'll see this very high up on my list. Yeah, going into like my 8 through 1. This is where it becomes like really tricky, like really, really tricky because like I have my 4 favorites, but like any one of these could just as easily be in there as well for me. Like I've just pretty definitively, with Ponyo, Porco Rosso, and Howl's Moving Castle kind of at the bottom. But like starting with my number 8, or technically my number 7, what's it called, which is what was previously his final film before The Boy and the Heron, which is coming out this year, The
Mm.
Wind Rises. This is, I believe that outside of the surrealist dream elements, I believe that this is his only movie that does not have any magical elements to it. Obviously, there's some
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
surrealist dream sequences, but the fact that he essentially makes an entire biopic about the creator of a specific type of plane, I can't remember the name of the plane, based off of a manga that based off the real life inventor of the plane that was then used by the Japanese during World War II. I would go so far out on a limb as to say that this is Miyazaki's Oppenheimer. That
yeah,
might be a little
yeah.
bit of a stretch, but like when
No,
I
it's
was
not.
dude, when I was watching Oppenheimer, like I was getting flashbacks to The Wind Rises, because another reason why I particularly have like a really special connection, because I'm realizing now that like before I saw Spirited Away back in 2020, this was the first Studio Ghibli movie I ever saw.
Really?
I don't remember what prompted me to watch it, but just out of nowhere, I was just looking. I'm like, I've been trying to get into animation in general for a while. I'd heard Miyazaki's name, I'd heard Studio Ghibli's name, and I saw The Wind Rises. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to watch this one. And I did. And I was blown away by it. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
just an absolutely beautiful movie. And again, in the same way, kind of covering a lot of the same themes as Oppenheimer. Strangely
Yeah.
enough, how it all comes full circle, especially since, again, this movie turns 10 this year, where, again, it's a guy who is blindsided by his dream of doing what he loves so much that when he's given a chance, he doesn't even realize how his invention is being taken away from him to be used as a weapon of war. And by the time he realizes it, it's too late. And he's kind of forced to live with the consequences of his choices. It also doesn't help that his wife dies of cancer, and
Spoilers.
again, spoiler, but what's
Yeah.
it called? But yeah, it's kind of uncanny how that worked out, and in a weird way, like, again, completely unplanned. I definitely know that Nolan was not thinking of this movie when he was working on Oppenheimer, but it is pretty uncanny how the two are connected. And yeah, like I said, outside of everything else, it is a beautiful, beautiful film. It is so down to earth. You so relate to this main character. You so completely understand just everything, all of his trials, all of his tribulations, all of his struggles that as he's trying to literally get his invention up off the ground, and yeah, I loved it. I was moved by it, and it blew my mind so much that for the longest time, like, I was just like, yeah, is this his best movie? And keep in mind, I watched Spirited Away next, and for the longest
Mm.
time, The Wind Rises was still his best movie. That's how much I fucking love this movie.
Yeah, I completely get it, man. And as we'll talk about it a little bit down the line, I'm sure. But yeah, for my number 7 now, I have Howl's Moving Castle. Yet again, another really, really beautifully animated film, like you had mentioned earlier. I maybe like it slightly more than you do because I don't quite love this one either. But yet again, like even like when the darkness is like moving through like the
Oh,
village and stuff,
oh,
like
it's amazing. Like I said, animation
blows my
wise,
mind.
this is one of the best, easily.
Oh yeah, and yet again, it is an allegory. His protest against the Iraq War. It presented in a very mystical way. Yet again, I just maybe the story doesn't hit for me as hard as some of his other films that I have above it. But yet again, it's a really solid movie. It really he's saying a lot. He's getting a lot across through the really lush and vibrant and really dark animation because yet again, you can say this about a lot of his films, but this is really one of his darker movies. And I think maybe that's another reason why people enjoy it so much. Doesn't completely put it over the moon for me, but yet again, another really good film in his discography or discography. What am I talking? Filmography. I'm so used to saying that stuff, but yeah, I mean, yet again, you can't blame anyone for loving this one.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, listen, it's an iconic one for sure. Yeah. Moving on to my number 7. Spirited Away. This is the big one.
Whoa!
Yeah, yeah.
What?
I got it ranked low. I got it
Oh
ranked low.
man.
Yeah, this should say. Yeah, it's
Mm,
the hype for me. It's the hype around it. Don't get me wrong. This is still fantastic. This is still one of the best animated efforts. Again, only the second ever winner for the
yeah.
animated feature for Academy Award. That's the problem. Is that, like, to me, all of Miyazaki's best work didn't get the chance to be honored at the Academy Awards because it
Yeah.
was before
Yeah.
the animated feature was a thing. So there was
Mhm.
only ever gonna be so many of his movies that were eligible, which distresses me because Spirited Away, like you said, obviously that's the one that I feel like makes him finally like makes mainstream American audiences aware of him because
Absolutely.
he had the deal with Disney. Disney was doing all the American dubs and putting all of his movies out and airing them on the Disney Channel. But like this to me is what announces Miyazaki to America, and makes him not just a revolutionary in Japan, but here as well, And while I remember when I first watched this, I compared it a lot to what's it called, like an 80s dark fantasy, a never-ending story, a dark crystal, a labyrinth, if you will, about a girl who is forced to enter into an imaginary realm in order to save her loved ones, that goes through a coming of age romantic story as it was. All the iconography, all the beautiful animation. I'd seen a lot of these figures beforehand. What's it called? The eating spirit. I can't remember the proper name of it.
No face. No
The no
face.
the no face spirit.
Yeah.
The witch with the giant face. Haru, the white dragon. All the different spirits and such that come to it. I thought it was really well presented, and I liked the how do you call it? I like the mysticism that kind of surrounded it. I thought that those parts of it were really well. It's just a matter of all the other movies that I have ranked above it. I just like better. It's just I liked it. I'm also keep in mind that, like, I think the next one that I put this in perspective. I won't spoil it, but the one that I watched right after Spirited Away is my number one, and still so far has
Mm.
not been removed from this. So like I said, Spirited Away, really enjoy it. Like I said, it's in the canon. It's still a 5-star, but just compared to some of the other ones that I have above it, it's not even close to me.
Well, I cannot go that far, and I won't spoil where it is on my list. But yeah, too, I was going to say, well, now I forgot what I was going to say, but I'll figure it out soon enough. But yeah, I guess that will take me to my number 6 on my list, which is actually Porco Rosso. Yeah, I mean, not his best movie, but I love this one. I really this was this was the actual last Miyazaki film I had seen going into this, and I couldn't have been more delighted that this was the one I ended on. And I will say, to kind of talk about the points you made earlier. Yes, I think some of that's fair. There are a couple moments that I found a little bit ridiculous and over the top, but I think this really is this might be the first film of his that's placed within a real world context and in really a socio-political one at that. And I think just the methodology, I think Porco Rosso is one of the best characters that he's ever written. I think one of the
I
most
agree with that.
interesting protagonists. Absolutely, man. Like it's undeniable, like how well written this character is. And like when it comes to like the whole thing with the curse, like I think a lot of people kind of look at it is sort of like a self-inflicted one. Because it's very ambiguous how he speaks about
Right.
it, but Miyazaki really inserts a lot of his socialist ideals into this film through the guise of Porco Rosso. I mean, there's that amazing. The reason I love this film too, and why it's a bit above like just the light hearted fare, of some of the other works I had lower down, like Ponyo. I think it's, there's that scene in the theater where his friend from the Italian Air Force is like talking to him. It's like, why don't you, join us, talking about the fascist side. And he says, I'd rather be a pig than a fascist. And I think that like that moment and so many others tells you everything. Like even though it is quite literal in the movie, it is how people see him. And I could see, maybe having a problem with that, but to me it didn't really bother me too much. I think with the romantic subplot, yeah, there's things that are a little bit weird. I try to like put it in context with the time of the story, not that that's an excuse or anything, but I think too, like there's some moments with part of the a love, well, I don't know if you want to call it a love triangle, I guess so, but there's some really riveting moments in here that I think rival some of the best character moments in any Miyazaki film, especially when he's like the scene where he's talking about going up into the sky in that plane
Yeah.
and seeing all
Oh
the
man,
like,
yeah, that sequence, okay, that
oh,
that that hit home for me. That was, I'm like, whoa, like was not expecting that to happen.
and I think the scenes like that really put this above some of his other movies. And I just think it's so much fun. As you said, it's his most swashbuckling. I think the characters are so vibrant and so memorable and so much fun. You expect it to go one way, but it goes in a completely lighthearted direction that I wasn't expecting, while still having like this weight to it. Kind of underneath the surface, setting it in post World War One Italy, and well, yeah, and France, obviously, because he's, the whole thing with him being exiled. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant film from a political standpoint, and yet again, I think Porco Rosso is one of his best characters. So I think for the reasons I said, that's maybe not why I love it as much as the ones I have in the top five. But man, you gotta love this movie. It's an absolute classic in his filmography there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that with the exception, obviously, of the one that I have that's not directed by him, I think we have three right now in common
Well,
for
we'll
our
go over
top
that
five.
one
We'll go
briefly
over
when we
that.
get
Yeah,
to it. Yeah.
so I'm there. Well, so yeah, so my next one,
No.
my number six, technically five in the Miyazaki ranking, is one that I literally just finished today, and that's My Neighbor Totoro. This one,
Mm.
oh man, this one was awesome. This one was great. It's just like I said, it's got everything that's just right. It's got the slice of life element, it's got the coming of age elements, but it's also got like the childhood innocence, that
Oh,
childhood
yeah.
naivete element to it. And again, just like I love just like the forest of magical creatures. Like that is, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's just like me. I don't remember like how many animated movies I watched with talking animals growing up, but like there was a reason why Totoro has literally become the logo of Studio Ghibli, as
Yeah.
you see up there. Like, oh man, this movie just has such a charm to it. The fact that yeah, I see you pointed that out
Yeah.
in the background as well. Yeah, it just has such a charm to it, and not even just from the kids' perspective, but like they're with their single dad who is pretty much taking care of them. Their mom's in the hospital who's sick, so
Mm.
I thought that I'll admit there were a lot of points where I was kind of expecting this to take a dark turn that I'm very thankful that it did not. But as far as like the whole idea of Totoro kind of acting as like this metaphorical caretaker for them and kind of in place of their mom as they're like learning to adjust to their new surroundings and all that. And the fact that there's never like any like manufactured conflict where the kids, they're not angsty, they're not, they're typical little kids. They're excited by literally everything, and they've got that,
Yeah.
they've got that youthful energy, if you will, that just propels them into these situations. That I love too, how like when the youngest one is trying to lead the older sister and the dad back to the tree in order to find where she found Totoro, and the
Mhm.
dad like doesn't like immediately back talk her and is like, oh, you're being silly, all that, and try to undermine her. Instead, he's like, oh, it's just the guardian of the forest must have just revealed himself to you.
Mhm.
You're pretty lucky. That doesn't happen to everybody. I thought that was just such a great way to explain it and all that, and just how it kind of ended up, where they weren't the magical creatures, led by Totoro, are not the end all be all solutions to everything, but it's not quite like as surrealist as one would think as well, where it's like, oh, they have to enter this realm in order to enter into this other world. No, it kind of just borders on them. You know, they're kind of literally like out of sight, out of mind. They're kind of protected by the mist. You know, I thought that the cat bus in general, I thought was a pretty nice touch as well, and maybe want to explore that world a little bit more. You know, I have all the rest above it because those movies kind of just all hit me harder. But this one, for a movie that I just watched today, like this one was really special.
Yeah, I mean, this one, I mean, I'll have a lot to say about it, but I agree. It certainly is a special movie. And now at my number 5, I have Castle in the Sky, which I
Yeah.
think, yeah, but I think it's like
Yeah.
maybe his most overlooked, but I think it's like maybe the best adventure film he ever made. And it's just so beautiful. Like there's so much great character development. There's so many beautiful worlds just going up into the sky in general. There's so much to appreciate about this film. It really is like kind of his take almost on an Indiana Jones adventure, you could say. And I just absolutely love it. And yet again, you have some of the messages there that you would expect. I really just don't think this one gets the amount of love and respect that it absolutely deserves, because for me, this is one of the best movies he made in the 80s, which is saying quite a lot. It's been a while since I've seen it, so forgive me if I'm not being as articulate as I could be on it, but it's still one of my favorite Miyazaki films, and I'm sure if I watch it again, I'd love it even more.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a little bit because I'm having a little bit of a conflict right now in terms of like my
Mm.
3 and 2, and you'll get to it. But so my number 5 right now. So I'm gonna talk about this now because this is where I have this ranked, and as well because going back and forth, taking a brief break from Miyazaki because
No,
my whole thing right
real
is
quick,
that.
real quick.
So real quick. This is the only Studio Ghibli movie that I've seen that is not directed by Miyazaki. It is directed by his Ghibli co-founder Isao Takahata, who
Yes.
unfortunately passed away several years ago. I want to say I believe in like 2011, I think. And it's Grave of the Fireflies. And so this famously came
Mhm.
out the same year, I believe actually the same weekend as Totoro. It had the double release. And the reason why I bring this movie up is because this movie is so, I believe for me personally, and again, I can't say based off of, again, I haven't seen any of the other Ghibli movies that aren't directed by Miyazaki, but I believe this is the best one that Miyazaki did direct because holy hell,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
you want to talk about just like, again, unlike Miyazaki movies, which are for the most part metaphorical to real world events, this one just dives
Yeah.
straight in, whacks you over the head with the hammer, and simultaneously in the gut punch in the field. This is one of the most depressing yet still somehow melancholic movies that I've ever seen. I remember when I watched this. This is also one of the only Ghibli movies that's not on HBO Max. It was on Hulu because of the distribution deal that they signed with it. And I mean, I was blown away by it. I was blown away just by the fact that I knew that there was no way in hell, just based off of the trajectory of where it was going and the direction and the course of the story. You know, where it's this brother and sister that are attempting to survive in the wake of the bombings of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. Again, these connections to Oppenheimer just keep sneaking their way in. It's kind of nuts how it keeps happening. But and they're just trying to survive and just trying to make their way through food as they're slowly dying of radiation poisoning. Like the fact that you are able to find any hope and solace in what is otherwise a really somber and depressing story of again just trying to find hope in an otherwise just miserable time. Again, this captures probably most accurately just the worst period in the entire history of Japan as a country. You know, obviously in the wake of the bombings as well. It's so brutally honest and yet so, again, like the fact that you can watch it and still glean some hope, obviously with the metaphor of the fireflies, the fact that these two are finally able to find peace and their suffering is able to finally end, even though you're watching these two beautiful, innocent souls just literally meet the end of their life. It's like it's bringing a tear to my eye right now as I'm trying to explain it. Like it's
Mhm.
just that hard. So I just need to talk about Grave of the Fireflies for a minute because it was so good that when I realized that it wasn't Miyazaki, I was almost a little bit heartbroken because I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
if only this could have been a part of the Miyazaki canon, it would have been so perfect. It
Yeah,
would
I
have been
mean,
so perfect, but alas, yeah.
yeah, I would probably I'd probably put that under, or I'd put above Porco Rosso, below Castle in the Sky. I saw that in theaters, and yeah,
Oh
it's
man.
big sad boy hours for that one. But yeah, I mean, obviously a fantastic movie. But back to Miyazaki now. I
Yes.
have to get into my number 4 on my list, and I have a feeling you might have this one a little bit higher. But of course, that's Princess Mononoke, which is just such a what? Come on, you're the guy who
Come
had
on,
Spirited Away
man.
at 7. Who
You're
are you
right.
to
You're
talk,
right. You're
man?
right. No,
Who are
you're
you to
right. You're right.
talk?
I'll give it that. Listen, I
Okay.
was primarily doing that for dramatic effect, but
All right.
I'll get to why. I'll understand why. There's a very specific reason why I have this movie ranked as high as I do when you see it.
Okay. But regardless, I mean, this really is maybe his most breathtaking film from a animation standpoint. Just the way they animate that beast, man. It's like how many frames? Like he did it all by hand. He
Yeah.
did it all in a row, and I'm just like, how does someone do this? Like if this came out in '97, like this would have won best animated feature had the category existed. I don't know how it couldn't. This is his most epic in scale. It really is maybe his most poignant when talking about environmental issues and how we're, you know, ruining the earth and how yet again, like how we're polluting it. All this stuff really slips into his work here. And the characters of Princess Mononoke and what is it? Well, whatever, the two leads in the movie, I just think are absolutely
Ashitaka
incredible.
is his name.
Ashitaka. Okay, yeah, Ashitaka. In just the whole thing with his arm. You know, like there's so much stakes in this film, and just the action set pieces that it builds up to at the end is just as I said, so epic in scope and easily his most violent film. Like he does not hold back at all in showing the gore. And yet again, I mean, just with the wolves and everything, like it really is just an absolute like I almost want to say it's like a fairy tale, but it feels too real. If that makes sense, as mystical as it is, and maybe that is because he's yet again making another metaphor for protecting the earth and conserving our resources. It really is such a brilliant movie from an action standpoint, from a thematic standpoint. I could easily see this being anybody's number one Miyazaki film, and it's certainly one of his best. I can't wait to rewatch it sometime in the near future, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't worry. I'll get to that in a little bit. I'm going to run through my next couple entries. Number 4, Kiki's Delivery Service. Again, when you already talked about
Wow.
this one, yeah, I love this one. I think the biggest surprise is how much I loved it. I kind of knew because this is, I believe, like my 4th or 5th one. I think I watched this after Ponyo, and the fact that I really enjoyed Ponyo as much as I did, like when I watched this, like I knew I was gonna love it, but the surprise for me was how much I loved it. Like it was just a fact of it's like again, it's a little girl who's a witch who ends up, starting her own deliveries, who ends up essentially starting like DoorDash, like, but before DoorDash is a thing,
Yeah.
via which,
That's fair. That's fair.
via fly, like
Valid.
what more is there to this movie? But it's like I'm constantly drawn back to what Brandon Fowler, our good friend, mutual friend Brandon
Yes.
Fowler talked about when he talked about Parasite and why that movie works so well, which is where you don't feel like you're watching, right? Because you and me, we've watched a lot of movies. Obviously,
Right.
we both went to film school. We studied the 8-sequence story structure. We know how to write script. We understand script writing and storytelling and all that. And well, a lot of foreign films that we watch, particularly Japanese, I find Asian cinema in general, Japanese cinema,
Right.
South Korean cinema, and such. They still have those base story elements. There's just something about the way that these characters are written and the way that the story progresses that just makes it feel like you're not watching a story. You're just watching a day or a couple of days in somebody's life. And I think he nails it probably the best with this movie, where again, it's just a daily slice of life that also happens to double as a coming of age story. The back and forth with the cat is freaking hilarious, and like probably a better talking animal sidekick than most of every Disney talking animal sidekick ever. And also the element that really stood out to me is the idea of kind of the metaphor of, say, losing the magic as you get older, and obviously how she like kind of has to like things that come so naturally to her as a younger child, and now that she's hitting that period in adolescence where she's starting to get a little older, it's not coming as easily to her, and she has to like kind of use it in order. She has to like almost relearn something that she has found so natural to her for her entire life, and how she has to utilize that in order to pull off this massive daring rescue, something that again just seems to be like something simple, with like, oh, it's a blimp taking off, and then like, oh no, how wrong that goes, and again, it's so simple, it's so down to earth, it's so beautiful, and yeah, I'm a big fan of this one. It's really good.
Yeah, maybe your point about these films not being as structured as maybe what we're used to. Maybe that's why I don't quite love them to that level as much as everyone else does. But yeah, I mean, it's still impressive the character work he's able to pull out of that structure and really keep you engaged and anchored in the whole time. But yeah, absolutely a great choice. And now at my number three, I actually have The Wind Rises, which,
Wow.
yeah, dude,
That's awesome.
when I saw this, man, I was just so beyond moved. And yet again, this is like even more real than Porco Rosso, because this really is the a biopic of sorts, you could say, of Jiro Horikoshi, who I think, yeah, that's his name. And it's very it very much is like Oppenheimer, like you said, like this guy who created this weapon, and he has, out of really more than anything than passion. Same thing with Oppenheimer, and really it has to deal with the consequences of making something so destructive. I just think those types of stories are so interesting. The people who are in it for the right reason, and then often they get maligned by the powers that be, and their creations are used in the way in which they didn't expect. I love that aspect to it, but the romance in here, oh my goodness, it really is maybe the most moving stuff I've ever seen in any Miyazaki film. Like, this really is maybe the one or two Miyazaki films that, like, by the end of this movie, I was crying. The ending of this film is one of the greatest endings in film in general, and
Yeah.
it is very low key, very slice of life, like you said. But I think this is one of the examples where it's the most effective, it's the most poignant. The under like the whole you know uh underpinning of World War II in this film obviously doesn't go as tragic as something in the Studio Ghibli canon, like Grave of the Fireflies, but it doesn't make it any less powerful by any means, and I'd say even more powerful uh to me at least. And you could tell that this really is his most personal movie, because it kind of was about his father in a way, who kind of worked in a very similar vein. And if he ended his career on this film, it would have been an amazing career capper. But the fact that he chose to keep going, is really astounding. I mean, 10 years later, and he's going to come out with another film. Well, it has come out with another film. Might I correct myself? But yeah, this really is maybe his most moving film in his entire filmography. But maybe not the one that I'm going to sit down and watch the most, perhaps. But yeah, easily deserving of a spot at number three, if you ask me.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to my number three. The 3 and 2 for me is probably the toughest one that I go back and forth, because
Yeah.
I watched these two movies both back to back, and the one I was so blown away by, and I'm like, they can't possibly top this. And then I watched the next one, and all I'll say is that if I was ever to suggest a double feature for me out of Miyazaki's canon, it's these two, and I think that watching them like right in the middle is like just the right way to go. And like I said, it could so easily be the other one, but as of right now, my number three is Castle in the Sky, because
Mm.
I went in again not knowing anything about it. Like both of these movies, I just went in not knowing anything about them, and again, just am completely blown away, because this one and then my number two and one, frankly, are probably, those are his three most epic movies that he's ever done. And my God, I don't think there's
Yeah,
anybody who
sure.
does epic animation, truly epic in animation form, like him, because just
No.
I have to refer to my review, because just the sheer amount of genres alone that he is able to throw in there.
Mm.
I had it written down. I caught it's an adventure movie, it's the hero's journey, it's the princess trying to protect nature, it's coming of age, it's a love story, it's a pirate adventure. It's got elements of Indiana Jones, with them trying to seek out this like kind of mystical, hidden flying fortress that not anyone maybe knows exists. Obviously, again, there's elements of elements of fascism, elements of people who are trying to exploit things for the weapons of mass destruction, mystical weapons for the wrong reasons and such, and the forces of good trying to make sure that it keeps out of their hands. I also think that this is probably the best use of the pirates, because the pirates start out ironically, as the bad guys. and then they ended up being on her team and had end up saving her near the end. Just again, just the self discovery angle. It's probably, if I had to say which of his movies was probably the most traditional, I'd say that it was this one. But again, it's what I constantly talk about. It's not how you use the story trope. Sorry, it's not the fact that the story tropes are there. It's how they're utilized. And man, they are utilized to a T here. Oh man, like I'm just so many different sequences that I could think about from this movie. With the awakening of the giant robot to the to the escape at the end, to it floating up into the sky, and like the way that the story builds and builds, with obviously her floating and everything. And yeah, it's just it truly is a magical. I remember I think I texted you like right after I was done, and I was like, holy shit, was not expecting that to be as good as it was.
That's a great word for it. It truly is a very, very magical adventure.
Yeah. Couldn't agree with
Yeah, yet again, I need to give that one a rewatch because that could definitely go up for me as well. But yeah, to your point about 2 and 3 being some of the hardest to rank, my 1 and 2 is kind of how I feel because I kind of went back and forth on these for a while, and I think I've come to, because my number 2 was actually originally my number 1, but then I watched it again about a year ago or so, and it soured a little bit for me. And I'll get into the reason why. I mean, it's a very small quibble, you could say, but to me, my number 2 is My Neighbor Totoro. The first, and these are really, as I said, like these are like 5-star, 9.5 out of 10 films. I absolutely adore these films, and I absolutely adore this one because when I first saw this, like I watched it with my mom, and like just watching these children play with Totoro. Like I was literally like looking at the screen. I'm like, look, he's jumping. And I'm like, what am I, like 4 years old? Like I really don't think that there's ever been a film where I've almost reverted to a childlike innocence watching it. And then it comes along My Neighbor Totoro, which yet again, I think my biggest issue with this film, like there are stakes in it, but I feel like it really does, kind of lack any sort of like structure or anything like that. But yet again, I think this is his best day in the life, like watching these children play out in the wilderness, and then the underlying theme of like their mother, maybe on the verge of death, we don't know, and them having to reckon with something so tough for kids to really take in at that period in their life, and it's just so subtle, like it's there, but it's so affecting into what it builds to in the final climax of this movie. But just Totoro is one of the greatest. Like he's not even really like developed that much as a character, but he's still one of the greatest characters in everything he represents. The fun loving nature of whimsical childhood wonder, and just seeing all these things happen on screen, and it makes you question, is this all like in their head? Is this all happening in real time? And I think by the end, it maybe insinuated that he is the spirit of the force, and he is helping him when the cat bus and everything, which is one of the coolest.
That was awesome. That was just so awesome. The way
how can you not love the cat bus, man?
Like the way that it's like, who conceives of that? Like who comes up
Miyazaki.
with that? A giant cat that also just happens to be like with what, 8 legs that just happens to be a bus for its body, like.
Dude, it's just so incredible. But just watching these children reckon with this, and at the same time, just have all this whimsical fun. Like I said, it really is. I've never felt any sense of childlike wonder like I did watching this movie, and yet it's one of his most profound and one of his most emotional. The 2 girls that they're focusing on is crazy, and just the respect. Like obviously we've been talking about how he talks about nature in all of his movies, but just the respect he has for the culture and in nature in this film. Like you were saying, the point of his father, like the scene where they go to the shrine is beautiful, or like the tree, I mean, and it just really cues you into the mindset of these people living in this small village. It could take place at any time. It's just one of those films that's just so timeless from top to bottom. And yeah, as I said, like there isn't really like any sort of narrative. I guess there's no sort of like narrative opposition in the film. It just kind of moves along, and maybe that's my biggest issue with it. But yet again, it's so minuscule for me, to say that I don't absolutely love this film. It's one of, I mean, Totoro is just one of the most iconic characters in animation in
Right,
general. I
right.
mean,
He's
how
he's
can
li-
you?
he's
Yeah,
literally he's literally the
the
Ghibli logo.
mascot.
So
Yeah,
yeah, he's the Ghibli
exactly.
mascot. So yeah. Moving on, my number two. I'm gonna zip through this because so my number two and one kind of do tie in together because I feel that my number two is like a perfect precursor for my number one. My number two is
Yeah,
Nausicaa of
that's
the Valley
fair.
of the Wind.
Yeah,
And again, just like talk about again, this is technically not the first Ghibli movie. It technically came out pre-Ghibli, like they were forming Ghibli like right around this time. I think the reason why it's now considered part of the Ghibli canon is because it got the redub by Disney when it was released in
yeah,
2005 with the American dub. And now put this in perspective. So I've watched about half of these movies with the American dub. This is one of them. And the
yeah,
fact that the American dub was not enough to detract from just the sheer epic nature of this movie. You were saying before how again he comes right out of the gate, like right out of the gate, with just showing how he is not afraid to take political swings. He is not afraid to show just like man's absolute bastardization of nature. He's not a show like he basically again it's his first movie. And it's basically like a war that's happening in a
yeah.
post-apocalyptic wasteland, and there's like random like there's like references to like an ancient battle that was fought in the past. I feel like I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, did they adapt Mistborn already? And I like wasn't aware. When the hell did they do Mad Max in animated format? And it's better than every Mad Max movie that's ever been made. Like
I wouldn't personally go that far, but that's okay.
with the giant insects and the giant floating fortress, and and the lead figure who's like again trying to like maintain peace, and all that. Again, also, can we talk about how Miyazaki, right there's this issue I would say in the culture right now of American studios trying to mass produce feminine protagonists and not quite understanding what it is that makes a good three-dimensional feminine protagonist. And I have to say for me personally that like I believe that Miyazaki is one of the few directors that I believe he has more female protagonists than he does male in
You're
most of his
probably
movies.
right.
Like Nausicaa, yeah, let's run it down. Nausicaa, female. Castle in the Sky, female.
Ichiro.
Totoro, female. Kiki's
Mhm.
female. Porco Rosso, that's the first one that's died. Mononoke, it's technically a co-lead situation.
Yeah.
Spirited Away, female. Howl's female, because I would say Howl's a supporting character in that movie.
Mhm.
Ponyo, again, kind of a co-lead
Kind of.
situation. So yeah,
Yeah.
so out of what 11, 10 movies, that's what 3 male leads at most, something like that. It's primarily female leads, so that should tell you something. And then, like I said, the fact that I understand what you were saying about this being a little bit heavy-handed. For me, that didn't
Yeah.
quite strike as much. I think if anything, it's a little long. It's probably the only movie where I really felt the 2-hour time length. But unlike Castle in the Sky, which I kind of like really like, I just like was just wanted to get more and more enmeshed in it as time went on. With this one, it's like there were a couple sequences where I'm like, okay, but again, just like fleshing out all of the cultures, having this just like massively rich and well-developed world in it, And again, acting as a precursor for my number one, which kind of took everything that Nausicaa already did amazingly and just amped it up to 11. Like, yeah, this had to be number two for me.
Sure. And to your point, like I do want to mention the side characters in Nausicaa because they're so great.
Yeah,
Like the
there's a
three
lot of good
old
ones.
guys who are like joking around all the time. And of course, I mean you gotta talk about was it Mito? Is he the guy
Yes.
with the yeah, dude, what a
Yeah.
badass
Which,
character,
by the
man.
way, in the American dub, Patrick Stewart in the American
Yeah,
dub. And oh man,
absolutely, man.
it's
And
done
it's just
really well there.
incredible. Incredible character work, I think through in that old woman who's always great.
Oh
Yeah,
hell
I
yeah.
mean this yeah, I certainly understand it. I just as I said, like it's some of the writing, it just takes me longer to get into the movie, but by the end, yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Well, I guess, if you guys haven't figured it out by now,
Yeah.
my number one is Spirited Away. This one, it took a little bit to grow on me to get to this point. But I've seen the English dub doesn't bother me. But I saw this in theaters, Japanese sub a couple years ago, and that was when I was like, "Yep, this is Studio Ghibli's best movie." There's a reason why it won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. There's a reason it made the Nathaniel Ahart and Company's top 100 greatest film series, the only Studio Ghibli film, might I add, on that list. And yeah, it's just an absolute amazing film from top to bottom. Even though, yet again, like my only thing with it is like I still have to settle into the structure a bit more. I'm sure this is a film that will grow my love for it will grow over time. But it's just one of his most beautiful. Just starting off on that country landscape, it's just absolutely incredible. I remember because I think it's actually they showed these on Cartoon Network, believe it or not, even though Disney was doing the dubs. Because I remember when I was a kid, I turned this on. And I was a little wuss when it came to a lot of stuff. Like I didn't watch Star Wars till I was like 8 or 9 years old because I was scared of C-3PO of all things. Anyway, or I thought I would be. But I turned this on one day, flipping the channels, and I just saw her parents getting turned into pigs, and I was like scared. Like I had to turn that out because I was like, "What is this?" Like it really is just yet again one of his, I wouldn't say his darkest film, but it has those moments like when her parents get turned to the, like one of the most unforgettable moments in any Miyazaki film. But just the character of Chichiro herself, she starts off as this very whiny, very dependent child on her parents, and just this journey of I wouldn't quite say well, I guess it is self-discovery because she's going to forget who she is, and she has to save her parents at the same time. There's so much stakes in here. This is literally the best world building I've seen in any movie since the original Star Wars from 1977. It's like, my goodness, the world Miyazaki builds in Yubaba's castle. Yet again, some of the most iconic characters like that I can actually name, like Yubaba, Sen, her little, her giant baby child, who I forgot his name, No Face. There's so many characters. Of course, what's the guy, Kamaji, the spider
Yeah.
guy who's like
Oh
working,
yeah.
and dude, the soot monsters. I mean, I could go on and on about the amazing characters in this film, and I love how it's told in like this kind of like vignette style. But yet the story moves along so seamlessly, has some of the most moments of ethereal beauty. Especially that scene where her and Sen are falling out of the sky. I think is like maybe the greatest moment in any Miyazaki film, and I think yet again, I think it's one of Joe. I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher his name here, but Joe Hisaishi. I butchered his name, but obviously a longtime collaborator with Miyazaki on his films. I think this and Castle in the Sky are probably his best scores, if I had to say. But there's everything, like this really is the hero's journey, kind of epitomized in a sort of Japanese lens, told in a very unique and unconventional way. But yet again, like you see the transformation of Chichiro throughout the entirety of this film, and it's so awe-inspiring. It's so subtly told, but it's so effective. It's just so magical. Everything you love about movies can be found in this film, and I think that's why it is Miyazaki's best. And I'm not just saying it's because it's his most acclaimed. I think there's a reason why it is his most acclaimed film, and certainly my favorite that I've grown to love over time.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it's the hype for me, and it was the fact that it was only the second one that I watched, and compared to The Wind Rises, like it's not that it wasn't worthy of all the accolades. It's just it didn't speak as personally to me as I was
Sure,
hoping.
sure. It's sort of like a personal thing, right?
Right, unlike my number one.
Right.
And I wanna add some prerequisites to this. So as you know, there were a lot of the awesome things that came out in 1997.
Well,
A lot of
I wonder what
incredible
one of
things.
them is.
Listen. We had Goodwill Hunting. We had Boogie
Uh,
Nights. We had Jackie Brown. We had Titanic. We had Face Off, which I will still dictate might be the greatest that Nicolas Cage has ever been in anything. I'm getting a little bit trollish and off track here, but needless to say, this was the third Ghibli movie that I'd ever watched, and Wind Rises was so beautiful, and Spirited Away, it was really good, but it just didn't hit me the way that I was hoping it would, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be the next one. I still remember when we recorded this. We had a guest on the channel during COVID. This guy named Jim Bob, and his big thing was he was still really kind of getting into movies, but his big thing was Studio Ghibli, and he watched what's it called, and we watched Mononoke next, and I just from the opening frame, I'm like, this is not only the best Ghibli movie, and still nothing that I've seen since it's top 10. I'm like, this is one of the best movies I've ever seen. This
Sure.
easily cracked my top 100, like without even a question. And I've got this thing where I'm slightly biased towards every movie that came out in the year in which I was born, no matter how crappy it is. I still love George of the Jungle. I still love Batman and Robin. Like the
Oh
shitty,
man,
put it this way, the shittiest movie that came out, if it came out in 1997, I'm like, listen, I'll take it. It's still an ace movie. But
biased
this
much?
there was absolutely a bias. Listen, I'm admitting the
Okay.
bias to you, okay? It doesn't work if you're admitting the bias. So there is a bias here. But like, oh man, the fact that this movie is in contention for my number one best of 97 over instances like Good Will Hunting and Boogie Nights should say something about
Great
the
year.
power of this movie. Like
Amazing
you were
year.
saying, it is his most unabashed. It takes everything that Nausicaa set up and just runs with it fully, you know, where it's like it's this character that gets cursed by the spirit that is a result of like this that is the result of like the spirits of the forest that are trying to fight back against the incoming industrialization. But then you get to know the industrialists, and they're not like the typical one-note character villain that you would expect. They're primarily led by like a former group of liberated prostitutes who are led by this woman who is essentially trying to make like a new name for the town. So you end up like almost like rooting for the quote-unquote bad guys of the movie, and you're like, wait, what the hell? Who am I supposed to be rooting for here, you know?
Right.
And that's before you even see like the giant boar spirits and everything. And that's even before you get to the spirit of the forest, with one of the most beautiful yet viciously violent third acts I've ever seen in general. And the shit with the wolves and how beautiful those characters are drawn. It's like there's barely anything else that I can say that does this movie justice. It's the best Miyazaki movie. It's, if you ask me, it's the best Studio Ghibli movie. It's one of the most epic animated films I've ever seen. It's easily in my top 10 favorite animated films of all time. It's in the top 100 for me, for sure. This Spirited Away is your number one. This to me is easily like everything that I think of when I think of Studio Ghibli, when I think of Miyazaki, is summed up in Princess Mononoke.
Wow, I mean, yeah, if that doesn't want me wanting to rewatch it, I mean, I don't know what will
I'm telling you,
get
man.
me to rewatch it.
I'm telling you, like still to this day, I will never not be surprised with him just having that dinner with the leader of the village and her just being like this regular person. Like I've seen that scene, that type of a scene where like the villain is trying to like warm themselves up to the hero so many different times in live action, but this is the first time where I actually bought into it, and I'm like, oh my god, I kind of see where they're coming from. You know, I kind of sort of understand why I'm like that. I'm not justifying it. I understand that they're still the bad guys because they're still the one that's destroying the forest, but like she's kind of got a point with what she's saying, you know?
Yeah, and that's what's so great about Miyazaki is the nuance he creates. There's no easy answer to some of these movies like Mononoke. And I think yet again that's one of the things that makes him such a brilliant filmmaker. Yet besides the fact that he's just an incredible artist, you know, quite literally. And yeah, I mean, there's never going to be like anyone like him ever again. And I am beyond excited, as I'm sure you are, to see The Boy and the Heron, because I have a prediction this is going to be one of the best movies of the year. I have a prediction it's going to be one of his best movies, and it won't be much longer, hopefully, until you guys are able to hear my thoughts on it at least. And yeah, I mean, what else can we say about Hayao Miyazaki?
Well, there was one thing that I did want to pose to you before we get out of here. Now, this is, I'll admit, I get it. This is your show. You know, this is your shebang and all that, and as I talked about it. But as we've done, I technically have this labeled on the Talking TV channel as a Hall of Fame episode. And what Dustin and I have done on previous Hall of Fame episodes is we take our individual lists and we combine them into one overall ranking. So may I pose to you potentially the idea of doing in our first official collaboration between Talking TV and Nathaniel Ahart, if we do a combined collaboration and come up with a 10. I say that what we do is we both have 11, right? What's it called? So we rule out, and we just do the 10, right? We rule out Cagliostro since you only have that. I haven't seen it. We rule out
we count that because it's a part of Miyazaki, and we don't count
because it's because it's be a part of Miyazaki. But we only have 10. But we can only do 10. That's the thing. So
I see.
Yes, now you see. So
okay.
With that being said, will you join me in doing the combined list?
Okay.
All right.
I will do it. I will do it.
Let's do it. All right. So, number one, and like I said, because we don't have a whole lot of entries like really in common. So, this is going to be interesting. So, number one, I'll tell you this.
Or do you want to start at 10?
No, we got to start at 1. We got to start because I already know as we count down, as we count our way down, it's going to be easier once we get to 10. We got to get the hard stuff out of the way first. So, how about this? I'll give you Spirited Away at 1. I'm very diplomatic. I'll give you Spirited Away at 1 if you give me Mononoke at 2.
Oh yeah, that's easy.
All right.
Yeah.
then I am more than happy to give you My Neighbor Totoro at 3, but I
Okay.
would vote for Castle in the Sky at 4.
I'm okay with that. I'm
All right.
okay with that. And then I would say Wind Rises at 5.
I'm more than okay with that.
Okay. Now here's where we get a little dicey.
Yeah, yeah, right. That was a lot easier than that. This is
Hmm.
definitely where we get dicey. So I'm between for 6 right now. I am between Nausicaa or get back to my list. I am between Nausicaa or Kiki's for 6. Which way are you leaning?
Kiki's.
Kiki's for 6, and then Nausicaa at 7.
Sure. And then Porco Rosso.
Yep, I'll give you Porco Rosso. Valley of the Wind. And Porco Rosso at 8. And that leaves 2. Well, 2 spots, 3 movies. So we have Lupin the Third, we've got Howl's Moving Castle, and we have Ponyo. So just because we have the 2 already in common, obviously, so it's just a matter of which one is at 9, which one is at 10, Howl's or Ponyo.
I want to go House
Yeah, it's got for 10 or for 9.
for 9,
For 9.
actually.
All right.
But
I may disagree, but I understand why. All right.
okay,
That was
fair
actually
enough.
way easier and quicker. So, with that being said, the official Talking TV Nathaniel Ahart combined Studio Ghibli top 10 Hayao Miyazaki Hall of Fame drum roll, if you will. Number 10, Ponyo, 2008. Number 9, Howl's Moving Castle, limited release in 2004, wide release in 2005. Number 8, Porco Rosso, 1992. Number 7, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, 1984. Number 6, Kiki's Delivery Service, 1989. Number 5, The Wind Rises, 2013. Number 4, Castle in the Sky, 1986. Number 3, My Neighbor Totoro, 1988. Number 2, even though will always be number 1 in my heart, Princess Mononoke, 1997. And number 1, unabashedly, the most iconic, the biggest, the best movie, objectively, that Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli have ever put out, Spirited Away, limited release in 2001, wide release in 2002. And with that being said, like you said, what more can we say? Bring us home, man.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, that's an awesome ranking. Man, I cannot wait to do this again with you. So before we get into what we're doing next, of course, if you aren't subscribed to me, you got to subscribe to Nathaniel Ahart. But if you're joining this type of, podcast style video for the first time, you got to subscribe to Talking TV. Got a lot of great content, a lot of great weekly live streams over there and more. Obviously, you can plug yourself if you want, but this is kind of on your channel, so I don't know how you want to do it.
Well, pretty much the way that, you already hit the YouTube, so that already takes one thing out of me. Yeah, just follow me at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms and at Official Talking TV Podcast across all platforms as well.
Which are linked in the description.
Yes,
Yep.
Exactly. And you will also see that this episode is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well, on the Talking TV feed as well. And it's also simultaneously live streaming on Twitch. So if you're not following me there, go ahead and follow me over there. Back to you, Nathaniel.
Absolutely. And I think, I'm very excited to announce that sooner than later, very, very soon, in fact, we are going to be doing a Scorsese retrospective in preparation for Killers of the Flower Moon, which is going to be more on Dom's channel, but obviously we will be streaming that on here as well, and we'll dive into the history of one of the most acclaimed filmmakers of all time's career and talk about our top 10 favorite films from the maestro himself. So yeah, guys, that's it for today. So until the next video, we will see you later.
Absolutely. And as always, people, remember, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.